Welcome to the 2022 Prometheus Awards ceremony. I'm William H. Stoddard, president of the Libertarian Futurist Society, which sponsors and votes on the awards. The first Prometheus Award was given in 1979 to F. Paul Wilson's novel, Wheels Within Wheels. It was organized and sponsored by L. Neil Smith. In 1982, the Libertarian Futurist Society was established to continue the Prometheus Award. That year's award went to Smith for his first novel, The Probability Broach. We've held award ceremonies without a break for 40 years now. In giving the award, we single out its recipient as a notable work of libertarian science fiction. Why should we have such an award? On one hand, while libertarianism is a political movement, we don't view legal and economic institutions as existing in a vacuum. The culture we inhabit shapes our views of what is possible and desirable. One work of art, such as a novel, may communicate more than a shelf full of treatises. Hoping for a freer world, we encourage the creation of such works. But we ourselves are also enthusiastic readers, and especially readers of science fiction. Our society tends to think of justice in legalistic terms, as the correction of wrongs, as restraining and punishing evil. And certainly that's part of justice. But an equally important part is honoring and rewarding merit. A society that fails to do that is in peril of losing its values. Authors who hold dissident viewpoints often risk having their merits go unrecognized. In these awards, we have the pleasure of sharing with you the works that have spoken to us, that have taught us something about our own beliefs and values, and that have moved us. To introduce the award for Best Novel, here is Michael Grossberg, Secretary of the LFS and Chair of the Best Novel Committee, which selects each year's finalists. Michael?
Thank you. The Prometheus Awards take their name from the ancient Greek myth about a titan who risked angering the gods by bringing the liberating fire of liberty, rationality, creativity, and self-awareness to mankind. Libertarian futurists recognize that art and culture can fire up the imagination about the limitless possibilities of liberty and its blessings. That's why the Prometheus Awards recognize science fiction and fantasy that dramatize the perennial conflict between liberty and power, and that highlight the benefits and virtues of cooperation over coercion. Last year, Libertarian Futurist Society members nominated 16 novels for the Best Novel category, and the 12-member finalist judging committee, which I chair, whittled them down to 5 strong finalists. We are honored today to have a recent Prometheus Award winner to present the Best Novel Award. Travis Corcoran won his first Prometheus Award for The Powers of the Earth in 2018, and his second Prometheus for its sequel, Causes of Separation, in 2019. We asked Travis to first speak about the importance of libertarian science fiction before presenting the Best Novel Award.
Thank you. The state of written science fiction in 2022 is a bit like the state of Western civilization, under assault from all sides, hollowed out, a pale shadow of what it once was. The soldiers who once defended our grand city have been defeated. There are invaders inside the gates, cavorting, aping their betters, and desecrating the ancient and sacred temples. The great bazaars are empty, and only a few small peddlers haunt the windy streets. Most of the citizens who built the city, stone by stone, have either been felled by old age or have wandered away. A few still act as if nothing has changed, but without the support of the great publishers and the cheers of the crowd, the performance rings hollow. It's tempting to give in to despair. Written science fiction had a great 80-year run from 1932 to 2012 or so, but now it's over. The cultural center of gravity has moved on from novels and short stories to comic books, video games, and movies. And yet, cultures never truly die. At worst, they are largely extinguished, with just a few traces lingering on as echoes in the overculture that conquered them. But at best, they linger on in the margins, on the mountaintops, in the monasteries, until the conditions are ripe for their rebirth. I'm very confident in the success of written science fiction in the long term, and not just written science fiction, but the white-hot center of written science fiction, which is libertarian science fiction. Why? Well, first, all art starts with writing. No movie can exist without a script. No video game can exist without a plot outline and a Bible. Even in an era where technology allows garage Kubricks, in William Gibson's wonderful phrase, create movies and video games in a home studio, the economy and precision of writing means that it will always be easier for a writer to create an alien species, a cursed starship, or a wormhole than it is for a creator working in any other medium to do the same. Second, I think that libertarian science fiction has a bright future because the two fundamentally libertarian tropes, the fight for freedom and the quest for self-empowerment through competence, are two fundamental human drives. The thirst for these virtues is ageless. You can see it in stories written last week, in the Icelandic sagas, in the Old Testament, and in ancient Greek poetry. Amusingly, the respect for these two virtues is so integral to human nature, bred into us by the crucible of evolution, which rewards competence and freedom with survival, that even when the enemies of liberty write fiction, they can't resist using these tropes. No one can write about a bully crushing the innocent and get the audience to identify with the bully. No one can make a character incompetent and lazy and make an audience want him to win. So the enemies of liberty contort and strain to write stories where they and their tribe somehow embody these virtues, which leads to hysterical spectacles where representatives of the world-straddling overculture are somehow painted as the underdogs struggling against enemies that haven't existed for 80 years. I mentioned evolution earlier, and I want to mention it again. Evolution doesn't just operate on biological species, but also on culture. Fiction from progressives is fundamentally unsatisfying for the reason that I just elaborated, and thus it is, I assert, maladapted for its environment and unfit for its purpose. If we need evidence of this, we can look at the ever-shrinking shelf space that science fiction has at bookstores and the slow-motion death of science fiction magazines. The invaders are inside the gates and they have taken our city, but in doing so, they have destroyed the aqueducts and poisoned the wells that kept the city alive. Where are the old inhabitants of the city and their children? Not dead. They were not destroyed, they were merely displaced. James C. Scott explained in The Art of Not Being Governed that it is a common human experience to flee from central authority, to destroy tax records, to abjure last names, to head for the hills, to become ungovernable. My assertion is that the community of people who love and create written libertarian science fiction, the white-hot core of all science fiction, have left the city and set up camps in the hills. Here in the wastelands, we don't just sing our ancient songs. To keep our culture alive, we respect the past, but we also innovate and build on it. We do it in conventions, like LibertyCon and BasedCon. We do it through organizations like the Libertarian Futurist Society and this award, the Prometheus. We do it through Kickstarter, Indiegogo, new publishers, and self-publishing. The barbarians have taken the city, but they can't fix the wells. They can't repair the aqueducts. Without the people who built the city, the cold stones that they have left behind are useless. The people were the city, and in the hills, our culture survives and thrives. The strengths of the finalists this year gives me ample evidence of that. Lionel Shriver, who first came to my attention via her novel The Mandibles, is, like a hacker in a cyberpunk novel, sneaking anti-authoritarian fiction through mainstream publishing, right under the nose of Big Brother. Bravo. Carl Gallagher, a personal friend, is writing such an absolute torrent of pro-liberty fiction that it would make Heinlein break out in a cold sweat, and unlike Heinlein, he self-publishes. Mackie Chandler, like Carl, self-publishes. Dennis Taylor, like those two, self-publishes. I'm going to mangle the name. Kazu Ishiguro publishes via a mainstream British publisher. At first, this poses a problem for my theory, but I think we can agree that someone who's won a Nobel Prize for Literature can be allowed to break a rule or two now and then. Mark Stiegler, who caught my attention 20 years ago with his novel Earthweb and made me aware of prediction markets, is publishing via a recent upstart LMBPN. And finally, the winner of this year's Prometheus, Wil McCarthy, who I've been reading since his novel Collapsium, publishes through dissident publisher Bain. The culture in the hills is strong. Come and join us. And congratulations to Wil on his win.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here. I'd like to thank you all for inviting me. Yours is a great organization with a noble purpose, and I can only imagine the energy that goes into it. I think it's ironic that I'm the one getting recognition today when you all are the ones doing the work. So my only regret here is that I'm not able to thank you in person. When I look back at the past Prometheus Award winners, I have to say I'm really pleasantly shocked to find myself on any list that includes names like Stevenson and Doctorow and Strauss, Vinci and Varley and Niven, and that doesn't even count the Hall of Fame winners who need no introduction from me. Even if Rich Man's Sky is the worst novel that ever won this award, it's a huge honor, and I can't tell you how much that means. I'd like to thank Toni Weisskopf for buying an unwritten novel based on nothing but a 7-page outline and her belief in me as a writer. I'd like to thank the rest of the Bain team for making the book happen. You guys are awesome. I'd like to thank Dave Seeley for the jaw-dropping cover art that, in my opinion, really perfectly captures the tone of the novel. I'd like to thank my wife, Evangeline, for not only serving as a subject matter expert, sensitivity reader, editor, and love of my life, but also for leaning hard on me to start writing fiction again. I think it's fair to say that if not for her support, this book would not exist. I'd like to thank all of the friends who edited and critiqued the work in progress. You all know who you are. What I'd like to talk about today is the nutritional value of our literature. In the animal kingdom, one habit that's really unique to humans is that we take the foods in our environment and we refine their components into these white powders. And then we remix the powders into glommy masses that nature never intended and that our bodies aren't really designed to process. These foods are yummy, but they won't leave you better off. We do the same thing with our literature. A little sugar, a little salt, a little flour and cocaine, and you've got a highly addictive confection that will keep readers coming back for more. But is white powder really better than an apple? Is a croissant going to feed you the way a bowl of oatmeal and mixed berries would? I think some people familiar with my work may sit up at this point and say, geez, Wil, you're a white powder kind of writer. And I certainly have been at times. But here's where I need to digress and talk briefly about my history. In the mid-2000s, I was living the dream of the full-time professional writer. I was a contributing editor at Wired magazine and a monthly columnist for the Sci-Fi Channel, with 2 New York Times notable books under my belt and standing offers to write for this magazine or that publisher. It was a stupid time to walk away from my writing career, but that's what I did. Instead, I founded a technology startup, knowing full well that it was going to consume 110% of my time and energy. It ended badly, as such things often do, but that took a long time, 10 years. In the wake of it, I realized I hadn't made any actual friends during that time. I'd actually lost a few. And yes, when the time was right, the VCs fired me from the company I'd started in my own basement. They didn't need R&D anymore, or thought they didn't, which is fine. I signed a contract. All's fair in love, war, and business. But I was surprised that nobody stood up for me. Nobody threw me a going away party or even sent a sympathy card. I was simply out. I'll confess to a certain degree of schadenfreude when the company crashed and burned 2 years later without ever once asking for my help. It was around this time that I finally started writing again. But after 12 years away, I found I couldn't simply dash off a quick plot driven by the white powder of bold characters and amazing science. I mean, those things were still in there, but now the characters' internal dialogues were taking a deeper role. Not just a Korean-American woman on a secret mission in outer space, not just how it feels moment by moment to be a Korean-American woman on a secret mission, but also, I think, a little taste of what it feels like to be a human being at all, caught up in the machinations of other human beings. White powder can't authentically convey that kind of experience. Also, this secret mission isn't happening in a vacuum, so to speak. I wanted to write about a future every bit as complex and ambiguous as the present. White powder science fiction takes one exciting trend and extrapolates it into the future, but honest science fiction has to extrapolate everything, and that's a lot of work. When I came back to writing after that 12-year gap, the first thing I produced were a pair of novellas, the second of which won an award. Next, I produced 2 novels, the second of which won an award. This award. I'd like to think that means I'm on the right track. When I set out to write Rich Man's Sky, all this stuff was floating around in my head. I'd been watching the rapid progress of various private space programs and wondering what it would look like if that same astonishing pace were maintained for another 3 decades. The 4 horsemen of the novel don't have to answer to VCs or governments or even shareholders. In terms of getting things done quickly, that's a really good thing. But that kind of concentrated power is also the very thing America rebelled against in 1776. That tension between the positive and negative aspects is what the book is really about. It's been criticized as both too sexist and too feminist, too capitalist or too anti-capitalist, too exploitive or too woke, too sexy or too prudish, too complex or too simplistic. I think all of these criticisms are accurate because all these viewpoints are represented in the story just as they are in the world. That's what whole food looks like. And again, these reviews, even if they're negative, imply that I accomplished at least some of what I set out to do. Is this a libertarian book? Am I a libertarian writer? Yes and no. It's important to remember that I'm not a character in the story. None of the people in there have the same background or experience as I have, so their points of view, all of them, are different than mine. I did my best to portray that honestly. Now, I'm not Hemingway. I definitely sprinkled some sugar and cocaine over the top of it, and if that keeps me out of literary heaven, so be it. People like cocaine, but if you're going to turn up the metabolism like that, you'd better also have some decent fuel for the fire. Whole foods and below, my secret recipe. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Wil, and congratulations again. And now it's time for the Hall of Fame Award. For this presentation, I need to wear several hats. In my capacity as chair of the Hall of Fame Committee, which selects each year's finalists, I'll be introducing the award. We had announced that F. Paul Wilson would make the presentation, but he's unable to attend for personal reasons, so I'll act as presenter as well. Why is there a Hall of Fame Award? Looking back, I believe the original intent was to establish a body of recognized libertarian science fiction. We gave 2 awards in 1982 and for some years thereafter. One went to Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, arguably science fiction. It was reviewed twice in Astounding Science Fiction by the regular book reviewer, P. Schuyler Miller, who disliked it, and by John W. Campbell, who praised it. And I think unmistakably the greatest pulp novel ever written. And the other went to Robert A. Heinlein, the first of many, for The Moon is a Harsh Mistress, which has become the founding work of libertarian science fiction as a subgenre. These works and immediate successors, including 1984, Fahrenheit 451, The Great Explosion, and the Illuminatus trilogy, served as a canon of sorts by which we defined our concept of libertarian science fiction. Note that from very early on, by including 1984, we established the principle that awards honored the work as such and weren't limited to some special group of card-carrying libertarians. Beyond that, there's a deeper intent. In ancient Rome, one of the crucial virtues was pietas. This was the root of our word piety, but its meaning was not specifically religious. It commonly meant remembering those who went before you, being thankful for their achievements, honoring the price they paid for them, and taking them as an example. In making this award, we are showing this kind of piety toward the worthy achievements of earlier creators. This year, the Hall of Fame Committee chose 4 finalists: Citizen of the Galaxy, a novel by Robert A. Heinlein; That Hideous Strength, a novel by C.S. Lewis, the conclusion of his space trilogy; Circus World, a collection of linked stories by Barry Longyear; and The Trees, a song by Rush, written by Neil Peart. This year's award goes to Citizen of the Galaxy, Robert A. Heinlein's 8th work to be placed in the Hall of Fame. Originally published as a juvenile by Charles Scribner's Sons, Citizen of the Galaxy also joins our young adult honor roll. In 1964, several years after the publication of Citizen of the Galaxy, Robert Heinlein wrote in a letter to Beecher Trimble, "Ginny and I are neither Democrats nor Republicans. We are libertarians, i.e., we believe in freedom and individualism to the utter maximum attainable at all times and under all circumstances. Personal freedom in any and every possible way at all times, with meticulous respect for the other person's equal freedom. And that, incidentally, is the only sort of equality I believe in." It would be hard to find a better statement of our outlook as LFS members. In Citizen of the Galaxy, in particular, Heinlein's young protagonist, Thorby, at various times, Thorby Baslam Krause, and Thor Rudbeck, starts out as a slave and a badly abused one because of his stubborn defiance of slavery. Over the course of the novel, he experiences wildly different social situations, from poverty to exceptional wealth as an interstellar trader, to extreme wealth as the heir to a corporate empire on Earth. But in all of them, he confronts the issue of personal freedom. In the course of this journey, he acquires mentors. Most importantly, he is bought by a crippled beggar, Baslam, who is more than he seems, and raised as the beggar's son. But he's also influenced by the matriarch of the trader clan that takes him in as a debt to Baslam. She teaches him the need to have rights and obligations clearly defined, which stands him in good stead in dealing with the corporate management of Earth. A less obvious mentor is his cousin Leda, stepdaughter of Rudbeck's principal manager, who largely engineers his struggle for control of the corporation, and who, when he thanks her, says, "Thor, this is for Rudbeck." On the other hand, Thorby encounters counter mentors, such as his dead father's parents, who insist that the slavery that left him with scars does not exist, and who are horrified when he tells them of destroying a pirate ship to save his free trader family from enslavement. They judge him by the standards of philosophical pacifism. Thorby is never more libertarian than when he rejects that standard and takes pride in self-defense and the defense of others. In the end, that becomes the value he lives for by his own free choice. And that is why Citizen of the Galaxy deserved a Prometheus Award. And to respond, we will hear first from Art Dula of the Heinlein Trust and then from John Tilden of the Heinlein Society. Art?
Thank you very much, Bill. First of all, thank you very much for the Libertarian Futurist Society Hall of Fame Award. I have received it, and it will receive a place of honor in the office of the Heinlein Trust here in Houston. So thank you for that. I'm going to leave it to John Tilden to talk about Mr. Heinlein because he represents the Heinlein Society. I'm going to make a few remarks about the legacy of Mr. Heinlein through the Heinlein Prize Trust, which was established in 1993 by Virginia Heinlein, and which became active upon her death in 2003. The purpose of the Heinlein Trust is to give the Heinlein Prize. It's technically the Robert A. and Virginia Heinlein Prize, and it's given for accomplishments in commercial space activities that are significant. There are 3 trustees, 2 now, 1 died a few months ago. And the prize has been given 3 times, one to Dr. Peter Dimiantis for his Spaceship One project, which did go into space with people twice and became a commercial project with Sir Richard Branson. The second was given to Elon Musk for his flight of the Falcon 1 off of Kwajalein in the Pacific, the first orbital flight. And he put his personal fortune behind that and probably would have gone bankrupt if that flight had failed. Subsequently, he has done a lot more, but all of that has been done with money from NASA, or most of it with money from NASA. And we don't give the prize to governments or corporations, but only to individuals. And if they're financed by a government, they're not an individual, which I guess is kind of a libertarian thought, yes. We also promote commercial space activities. We've done this all over the world by showing spacesuits, both American and Russian spacesuits, in Israel, Mexico, Britain, Europe, the United States, China, and we're still doing that. It's a very good program, a lot of fun. We also put out audio-visual works. Almost all of Heinlein's works are now available in audio. Some are available in movies, and we're moving forward to do more of that. We also have recently started doing some comic books, some graphic novels, I believe they're called. Additionally, the Trust, by default, had to publish the complete works of Robert Heinlein because our publisher for it went bankrupt, Misha Merlin Corporation. And we also published some science books that are in critical areas like space solar power, space mineral resources, and space elevators. Do that in cooperation with the International Academy of Astronautics, because that knowledge has to get out. And so we see it within our purview as commercial activity in space. We also established a Pay It Forward Fund for scholarships at the International Space University in Strasbourg, France. The trust works all over the world. Mr. Heinlein is now in print in more languages and in more countries than he was when he was alive, which is remarkable for an author that died in 1988. The Pay It Forward Fund is very successful because there are no strings attached to it. It's not a loan, it's a scholarship. But the person who takes it assumes a moral responsibility to pay back into the fund when they're able. And since these people are very capable, we exceeded some time ago the amount that was ever put in by the trust from the people putting money back into it. We also give the Heinlein Award. Occasionally, it's a small award, but we have a lot of fun with it. We gave it for solar sailing on a spacecraft to Mercury, and that can be given to a government or a company. We support the National Space Society and Space Week and various other things with small grants. And we've supported the Heinlein Society in some of their things, such as Heinlein for Heroes. So I'm now a little over my time. Thank you very, very much. And I'll turn it over to John, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Art. Good day to you all. I'm assuming that the audio is coming through okay. Somebody will shout if you're not hearing me fine. It's my pleasure to provide a few remarks on this occasion of Citizen of the Galaxy being inducted into the Prometheus Awards Hall of Fame. I add my thanks to Arts to the Libertarian Futurist Society for this honor. Personally, I've been a Heinlein fan since I was a preteen, and I've been involved with the Heinlein Society since its inception in 2000 as a charter member and now a lifetime member. I've served on its board since 2012 and as its president since 2019. Our charity exists to pay it forward through continued good works, supporting both the literary legacy of Robert A. Heinlein and those causes he supported during his lifetime. We were created with the initial support and guidance of Mrs. Virginia Heinlein, Robert's widow, and as an all-volunteer organization depend on membership dues and donations to support our programs. Those programs include discussing the significance of his works to both existing fans and helping to create new fans and keep Heinlein's legacy alive. So let me get to Citizen's place in the legacy of Heinlein's work. I don't remember exactly when I first read it, but I believe I came to it later as I read most of Heinlein's works after I graduated college. As mentioned, I think this book is now classified and discussed as one of Heinlein's juveniles, intended for a younger audience when first published in 1957. I'll note again that the Heinlein Prize Trust has continued to put faith in this work being intended and accessible for younger readers, adapting it as the first graphic novel that it published for today's generation in 2014. The themes of this book certainly resonate with those that have a libertarian philosophy. It's highly structured and I think well plotted to show the main character Thorby's growth and understanding as he moves through various phases in the circumstances of his life, as Bill kind of gave you the synopsis for. It deals directly with the concept of personal responsibility and in several ways with the various ways slavery may exist within a culture. Heinlein was himself heavily influenced by Rudyard Kipling's Kim in writing this novel. If you had never realized those parallels or influences, now I've given you the perfect excuse for a reread of both of those classics. So the Heinlein Society published a review of Citizen some years ago by our member, Alan Milner. And I'd like to quote a few of Alan's observations here now, as he makes some points better than I think I ever could. And like our hero and mentor Heinlein, I'm just going to file the serial numbers off, but I'm giving him credit. On the surface, Citizen is an eye-opening experience specifically because it eschews the easy argument against slavery by race and moves directly into the more difficult argument against slavery as an inappropriate invasion of personal rights by both the state and by economic entities. Underneath that, however, Citizen is an impassioned plea for lifelong education. In many of Heinlein's books, a principal character is portrayed over time, beginning in relative ignorance, learning from experience, receiving the benefits of tutelage from an authoritative source, and then using those teachings to resolve subsequent problems. A formula, but one that works very well, repeatedly, in the hands of this master storyteller. Citizen of the Galaxy is one of those rare achievements, a book that actually focuses the reader's mind and teaches him something worth knowing in the process. If Starship Troopers is perennially on the official reading list for our military service academies in the US, then Citizen should be required reading for those training for careers in education, psychology, human development, and, of course, fatherhood. On that same note, and in closing of my remarks, I'll share something personal about this work. I have a Christian faith, and when my son was baptized, we had a small celebration for him on the special day with a small party. One of my good friends is not Christian, but is a big Heinlein fan, and he gifted my son a copy of Citizen of the Galaxy as a token of the day and as an influence on his personal development when read at the right time. Today, I can't help but echo the earlier comments that the novel's place in the Hall of Fame might serve a similar purpose for others. Again, thank you very much for allowing me to be a part of this day.